The year I turned 34, my family gave me a nickname. They didn't mean it as a compliment. Behind my back, and eventually to my face, they started calling my business the hobby. Not the store, not the company, the hobby. As if 5 years of 80-hour weeks, of skipped vacations, of sleeping 4 hours a night while I built something from nothing, was the equivalent of scrapbooking or knitting sweaters for the dog. It started small. A comment here, a smirk there. My mother would ask my sister-in-law how the real business was doing, then turn to me almost as an afterthought and ask if my little shop was still open. My brother-in-law, Derek, ran a mid-sized logistics company that his father-in-law had basically handed him. He wore the title of CEO, like a costume that fit a little too loose, but nobody in my family ever questioned it, because Derek had a title, a corner office, and a company car. I had a storefront, a warehouse lease, and a stubborn refusal to quit. For years, I let it slide. I told myself that family teasing was just family teasing, that it didn't matter what they thought as long as my numbers were good and my employees were paid on time. And my numbers were good. Better than good. I'd built a specialty retail and online business from a single rented unit into 3 locations and a distribution warehouse that shipped product across the entire region. I didn't advertise the details to my family because, frankly, I didn't think they deserved a play-by-play of something they'd already decided wasn't worth respecting. But there's a difference between letting something slide and being humiliated on purpose, in front of people who matter to you, on a night that's supposed to be about warmth and gratitude. It happened at Christmas dinner 2 years ago. My parents' dining room was packed the way it always was. Aunts, uncles, cousins, my husband, my 2 kids fidgeting through the adult conversation, waiting for dessert. Derek had brought 2 colleagues from his office, people he clearly wanted to show off in front of, because nothing says holiday spirit like turning a family dinner into a networking opportunity. At some point, the conversation turned to what everyone did for work. One of Derek's colleagues asked me, politely, what kind of business I ran. Before I could answer, Derek cut in, laughing, and said, and I remember every word of this because it's carved into me. Oh, she's got her little shop downtown. It's cute. Keeps her busy while the kids are in school. The table laughed. Not everyone, but enough people. My mother laughed. My own mother. My sister-in-law added, it's adorable, honestly. So creative. Like I'd shown up with a homemade candle and asked for validation. I sat there with a fork halfway to my mouth, my face burning, and I did the thing I always did in that house. I smiled, said something short, and let the conversation move on to safer ground. My husband reached under the table and squeezed my hand, because he knew exactly what that moment cost me, even if I didn't say a word about it for the rest of the night. But here's what none of them knew. What none of them had ever bothered to ask, because asking would have required treating me like someone worth knowing the details about. My little shop wasn't just 3 retail locations anymore. 8 months before that Christmas dinner, I had quietly signed a deal to acquire the commercial property that housed Derek's company's regional distribution center. The building his real business had been leasing for 12 years. I hadn't done it out of spite. I'd done it because my company had grown into commercial real estate almost by accident, through a warehouse investment that turned into a property portfolio, and that particular building had come up for sale through a broker who had no idea, and frankly, no reason to know, that the tenant listed on the lease was my brother-in-law's company. I found out the connection almost by accident myself. Reading through the tenant file during due diligence, seeing his company's name on page 14 of a stack of documents. I remember sitting at my desk that night, staring at the screen, feeling something shift in my chest. Not rage, exactly. Something colder and more patient than rage. I didn't say anything. Not to my husband at first, not to my parents. not to anyone. I closed on the property in October. Derek's company kept paying rent to a property management company that, as of that closing date, worked for me. He had no idea. Nobody did. So there I was at Christmas dinner, being called adorable and creative by people who didn't know that the roof over their real business now belonged to the woman running the hobby. I let that knowledge sit in my chest like a coal for 3 more months. I wasn't in a hurry. I wanted to do this the right way, not out of anger, but with precision. In February, our property management team sent out standard renewal notices to all tenants ahead of lease expiration, as they always did. Derek's company received theirs like every other tenant in the building. Nothing unusual, nothing personal, just business as usual, except this time the business was mine. A few weeks later, I got a call from my mother. She sounded strange, careful, the way people sound when they're trying to figure out how much you already know before they say something they're embarrassed about. She told me that Derek had found out something interesting at work. That the building his company operated out of had changed ownership. That when he'd pulled the new ownership records out of curiosity, my name was on them. I asked her, very calmly, what she wanted me to say about that. She didn't really have an answer, because there wasn't a graceful way to walk back years of calling something a hobby once you realized the person running that hobby now controlled whether your son-in-law's company had a roof over its head. Derek called me directly a few days after that. His voice was different than I'd ever heard it. Careful, almost formal, like he was talking to a stranger instead of family. He asked if it was true. I told him yes, that I'd acquired the property back in October, that it was a straightforward investment, nothing personal. He asked, a little too casually, whether the new ownership would affect their lease terms going forward. I told him the truth. Nothing was changing for now. Rent stayed the same, terms stayed the same, because good business doesn't punish a paying tenant for a payment history that had nothing to do with family drama. But I also told him, in the same calm voice I'd used my whole life around that family, that future renewal decisions would be made the same way I made every other decision in my company, based on what made sense for the business. He understood exactly what that meant. So did everyone else. Once the story made its way around the family, which it did within days, because nothing travels faster in that family than a secret nobody was supposed to know. At the next family gathering, nobody called my company a hobby. My mother, who had laughed the loudest that Christmas, spent an uncomfortable amount of time asking me detailed questions about the property side of things, as if she'd suddenly developed a deep interest in commercial real estate. My sister-in-law didn't say a single word to me about business the entire night. Derek was polite, quiet, and noticeably careful about which jokes he made and who he made them in front of. I didn't gloat. I didn't bring it up unprompted. I didn't need to. The building did the talking for me every single month when the rent was due. What I've learned from all of this isn't really about property or leverage or even about Derek. It's about the fact that people will keep underestimating you for exactly as long as you let them, and the correction doesn't have to be loud to be permanent. I spent years smiling through comments that were designed to make me smaller in front of people I loved. I never once raised my voice about it. I just kept building, quietly, until the math made the joke impossible to tell anymore. These days, my little shop employs 41 people across 3 states. I own the building my brother-in-law's company operates out of, and 2 others besides. Nobody at that dinner table calls it cute anymore. Nobody calls it a hobby.